Hello and welcome. This is a virtual open house for the New Mexico Department of Transportation US 285 project from approximate milepost 384 to milepost 393 near Tres Piedras, New Mexico. This presentation will share details about the proposed project. You are invited to provide input about the project, and information about how you can provide comments will be shared at the end of the presentation. This presentation will be available from August 7th to August 24th, 2020. The project team consists of the New Mexico Department of Transportation, or NMDOT, the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, Wilson & Company, the engineering consultant, and Oken Consulting Solutions, who conducted environmental surveys as part of the project. This map shows the project limits. The project begins north of the US 64, US 285 intersection in Tres Piedras and extends north approximately 8.5 miles past the No Agua mine. All improvements would occur within existing NMDOT right-of-way. The project purpose is to improve the safety of the corridor for the traveling public. The project need is based on inadequate shoulder width, which leaves little to no shoulder available to motorists, and roadway age, which is contributing to deteriorating pavement conditions, especially in the area from milepost 390.4 to 392.3. The proposed project would include several improvements. First, the existing travel lanes along the 8.5-mile corridor would be rehabilitated. Shoulders would be constructed along both the northbound and southbound lanes, and for the majority of the corridor, these new shoulders would be 6 feet in width. Drainage structures would be extended in order to accommodate the new, wider roadway typical section, which would include the new shoulders. Existing turnouts would be preserved and reconnected to the roadway, and wildlife-friendly fencing would be constructed at the right-of-way line. The diagram on this slide shows the design of this fencing. These graphics show the proposed roadway typical cross-sections. The first one contains two 12-foot driving lanes and two 9-foot shoulders and would be built within the limits of Tres Piedras from milepost 384 to milepost 384.4. The second typical cross-section is for the remainder of the project corridor outside of Tres Piedras and contains two 12-foot driving lanes and two 6-foot shoulders. It would be built from milepost 384.4 to 393. Construction is proposed to be in 5 phases. Construction would start at the northern end of the corridor and progress south towards Tres Piedras in 2-mile increments. Traffic will be stop controlled and follow a pilot car on a single lane while the contractor reconstructs one half of the roadway at a time. The construction duration is anticipated to take 2 construction seasons. The project is programmed in the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, for $12 million. However, at our 60% stage, our projected project cost based on the current bidding environment was just under $18 million. As the project continues to progress in design, we will continue to hone these costs, but the NMDOT will either need to find additional monies to cover the project costs or consider ways to potentially reduce project scope, such as by reducing the length of the project. This is the project schedule. We recently completed the 60% plans in June 2020. The public involvement portion of the project is now being conducted virtually and includes this public meeting. It will be concluded in August 2020. 90% plans will be submitted in September, with final plans following in November 2020. The project is currently planned in the STIP for a fall 2023 letting, meaning that construction would start in the spring of 2024. The following slides discuss the environmental component of the project. Because the project will use state and federal funding, we are required to follow the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, process. NEPA requires that social, economic, and environmental factors be considered in project decision-making. NEPA does not require that a project have no impacts. Rather, it requires that potential impacts be considered in relation to the no-build alternative. Typically, a wide range of environmental issues are considered, but only those relevant to the project are studied in detail. For this project, very minor or no impacts are expected in relation to air quality and noise, visual resources, relocations and right-of-way, community and land use, Section 4F properties, which include publicly owned parks, recreation areas, and wildlife refuges, hazardous materials, environmental justice, and farmland. Areas of potential impact are shown on this slide and include water resources, wetlands and floodplains, cultural resources, and biological resources. A cultural resources survey was completed in the project area between August and October 2019 by Oaken Solutions. A large number of resources were identified and documented in the project's area of potential effect. These include 7 archaeological sites, 13 historic buildings, 4 historic culverts, the remnants of the Chile Line railroad line, 2 descansos, or roadside memorials, and 46 isolated occurrences. The project would have no direct or indirect effects on the majority of the resources that were determined eligible or potentially eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. At the eligible archaeological sites, project-related activities or slope limits extend within the edges of site boundaries. However, these localized impacts were individually evaluated, and it was determined that the project would have no adverse effect on the characteristics of the sites that qualify them for listing on the National Register. Overall, the project would have no adverse effect to any historic properties. Potential impacts to surface water and wetlands were evaluated during the biological investigation. All drainage crossings were field inspected for potential wetlands during biological surveys. One wetland was identified at Tres Piedras Arroyo. Project activities will avoid the wetland area, and there will be no impact to this wetland or to any other jurisdictional waters of the United States. Biological field surveys were conducted in June 2019 and May 2020. A biological evaluation report was approved by the NMDOT and is undergoing review by the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service. The survey identified the following resources: 1 wetland at Tres Piedras Arroyo, 4 culverts with nesting cliff swallows, wildlife crossings of elk, pronghorn, and deer throughout the project area, active prairie dog burrows outside the right-of-way, and noxious weeds, including instances of Siberian elm, cheatgrass, and hoary cress. Measures have been proposed to avoid or mitigate any potential impacts of the project on biological resources. These include avoidance of the wetland at Tres Piedras Arroyo, avoidance of nesting migratory birds, wildlife-friendly fencing along the corridor to provide safe crossing for elk, pronghorn, and deer, and reseeding with native seed mix after construction, and use of best management practices during construction to avoid the spread of noxious weeds. An NMDOT categorical exclusion, or CE document, is currently being prepared for this project. Your input on the project is an important part of the environmental process and will be included in the final environmental document. An important part of the NEPA process is public involvement, which is why we are reaching out to you at this time. Your questions, comments, concerns, and special knowledge of the project area are a valuable part of the design and decision-making process. Please submit your comments to the following physical or email address by August 24th, 2020. If you would like to discuss the project in more detail, please feel free to contact Veronica Lovato-Lerma with the NMDOT or Conrad Lay with Wilson & Company. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to receiving your questions and comments. Have a great day.